Hi everybody, and welcome to SA Rugby Magazine. We're looking at Wales versus South Africa. Two teams going in the opposite directions, to say the least. Wales, dismal during the Six Nations, lost every game, I believe.
Yeah, first time in 20 years, Kev. You know, finishing bottom of the lot, back-to-back losses against Italy. Yeah. So, yeah, you could say riding on the back of South Africa being current World Cup champions, 4 World Cups in the bag over the history, and Wales are at a very low ebb. You know, not only domestically but internationally. Gatland is back. You know, they're on a losing streak, Kevin, and the fact is, you know, talking to some insiders, they've forgotten how to win. You know, and that's a tough pill to swallow.
They've also had a lot of top quality players.
Yeah. Listen, and you know that's natural science, isn't it? You know, and maybe some of those players that we might not reference, but you kind of, you know, World Rugby will understand, like Alan Wynne and so. You know, those guys should have maybe been moved on a lot earlier. And that was obviously in the malaise of the previous coach, Wayne Pivac, who took over from Gatland after Gatland's kind of successful reign of 11 years managing the team going forward. I thought then would be the perfect moment to press reset and say, we are in a rebuild, even though that was kind of 18 months before the World Cup. Yeah. Now I think the hand has been forced to Gatland now that we're in this position, that the new normal is, when you look at the 23 selected or the 35 pool of players that are considered to be Welsh internationals, Zelly knows very few of them, you know, and names are a little bit unfamiliar to me. But this is the new normal. We've got to get used to that now.
So it's definitely a rebuild, isn't it?
It is definitely a refill. The only confidence that I can share with you is that over the last couple of weeks, I've been fortunate to have a little bit of time with Neil Jenkins and Rob Howley, who are obviously integral in the backroom staff there. They remain enthused and encouraged and as passionate as ever as they are, because yes, they are kind of long in the tooth and they've been around, but they know what it takes to kind of get that Welsh team fizzing and ticking. So there are a lot of internal components that need to happen. It's not only just conditioning, but I think the biggest Achilles heel we've seen on this losing streak is the lack of game management in key moments that really cost them, and of course has led them to lose, you know, compellingly.
Yes, and if you look at, you know, when I look at it being Welsh, to go from the 2019 World Cup, where I lost a bet and got a Springbok tattoo, but 1916 there was almost a few South Africans that got a Welsh tattoo. So to go from the 2019 sort of where we peaked, and we're unlucky not to win that game. I know I sound a bit Welsh, but it was a good game, good semi-final. We were in the semi-finals of the World Cup and 3 points, and losers by 3 points. Yeah. But since then, you had the Pivac area, which to me was you know, them losing Edwards to France as a defensive coach, because Welsh were great defensively during that era, but they're young. I can't even name their players.
Well, if you go back to 2011, where they were called the young side, but they were called like New Zealand B in New Zealand at the World Cup. Everyone thought they would go through to the final. They were wanting that New Zealand.
We were one kick away from this.
Wales kind of final, but some really good players, quality players, led by Warburton, a young George North. Then 2015, there was a wobble, but hell of a competitive at the World Cup against South Africa.
We lost a lot of talent in that World Cup.
And basically you beat England in the league stage, put them out of their own World Cup, and it took a brilliant bit of play from Dwayne Vermeulen at the back. To force that extra space for Farida Pret to score in the corner, and that took South Africa through to the semi-final. I felt when Pivac came in, there was just this absolute confusion in style of play. He had been successful at club level. He didn't know whether to get rid of the oldies, to bring in the new youngsters, and Gatland had come back off a very poor spell with the Chiefs. And the Chiefs, subsequent to that, have been outstanding. They're playing in the final under Clayton McMillan, and Gatland then having this played 6, lost 6, and I chatted to Scotty about it yesterday, is there this expectation in Wales that Gatland is once again the saviour, but the Gatland era has actually passed them by with this group of players. Jack Morgan, who's so influential, he's not playing, he's pulled out of the match, and he was one of the bright sparks that come from through the World Cup. Is it like I'm going back to something because I just believe that it has to work with Gatland, but they should maybe have stuck with Pivac, or
no, I can't. I don't.
I will agree with you, Kev. I think at that moment, the Welsh Rugby Union were faced with like a force majeure moment. It's like, oh fuck, we need someone now. We can't go through another 6 months process of interviewing candidates and so on, because we need to put the plaster on now. And I think it was the decision made in the moment, without the liberty of forward thinking, in the context of where do we want to be in 5-10 years time. So it is what it is. But that said, Gatland now has to evolve as a coach himself, because you can't rest on the laurels of what worked 10 years ago, what worked 5 years ago, because
they don't have the quality of players, do they?
It's shifting. It's shifting, and you need to find your own rhythm in it. And yes, he likes to feel that his players are fit, super fit. But that is only one component of what makes an international team tick, isn't it?
Yeah.
You are a collective.
An important one, but
it's an important one, but you are the collective. You can't be physical without being fit. You can't make good decisions without being fit. Yeah. So that will obviously be a huge, primary objective for him. But he hasn't got the luxury of time now, as they play in Twickenham this weekend, and then they head off to Australia for 2 tests, and also pick up a Queensland Reds encounter on the late week. So, the turnaround time now for Gatland is, it literally, the players have to start listening to the direction, the corporate communications, and they have to start delivering, because there's no more excuses anymore.
If you go back though, two years ago we sat here and I ridiculed the Welsh team, and they came to Loftus and were a kick away from winning, and the next week they beat South Africa 13-12 in Bloemfontein. Now, what is different, Zels, to that South African Springbok mindset to the one that Rassie's picked, the 23 players or run out, the 7 non-travelling players? Because we've been notoriously so started South Africa in a test season.
Yeah.
What dimension do you expect to see at Twickenham that we didn't see 2 years ago when we were 18-3 down in the first half at Loftus, looking like we'd never played?
Yeah, I think what counts in Wales' favour this weekend, I think they are deserved underdogs. But what does count in their favour is there is a lack of continuity and cohesion in the Springbok team created by it being the season opener, potential hangover from the World Cup, and some new faces in the lineup that wouldn't be there if this was a World Cup final. And so I think there will be a little bit of ring rust and a few things that need to be ironed out to make the Boks operate at their best. And I think we saw it in Rassie's first test when they played at DC. It was a rejig team that Peter Steph Toy captained, and it didn't go our way that day.
Peter Steph played off the bench in that opening match against England.
Yes.
Very few of those players played that England series. Some of them grew into the Springbok World Cup winning squad. The side that he picked against Wales, he made 13 changes for the Bloemfontein test, and they lost. It was like individually good players, but
and Rassie's always been willing to experiment, hasn't he?
Yeah,
but when you look,
that's part of an evolution, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not only within the squad, but how you kind of want to see what the next 6 to 12 months looks like. Because that second test was, as you said, you coined it. Oh, this is a kind of Springbok barbarian side, and they've got all carte blanche to do what they want, but they didn't stick to what they were good at, which was territory, line possession, catch and drive, and that was their undoing that day.
But if you take the respect I think he's shown this occasion, is the side that he's picked. Given there's certain players unavailable through injury, about 8 or 9, but there's 5 World Cup winning Springboks that played in the final in the pack. There's 8 in that side. So where he's picked a Jordan Hendricks at 10, he's made sure he's not going to play behind a pack that's backpedaling. He's picked a very good tight 5 unit. He's integrated youngsters in there and kind of created an environment where they can only succeed, as opposed to saying, let's see if you fail. And I felt that was the Bloemfontein one. Too many players were put in there with the potential of failing.
Look, it's a tough. Sorry. No, you go.
I was going to say, talking to your point there about the forward dominance, Jordan Hendricks are playing behind a pack that's winning. I think that's the key issue for Wales. If you had to nail it down to one thing, they just are not producing the breakdown thug, the destroyers. They've got guys that are hearty, that play above themselves, the overachievers, the little bloke who's going to pinch the ball. But Adam Beard is the only guy that really stands out for me. They haven't replaced the Sheriff at hooker. Gethin Jenkins was a killer when he was around. The Jones and Jones props. Warburton was great. I just don't see that anymore in Welsh rugby.
Exactly, this is the new normal.
Yeah.
And what we have on Saturday, we have Evan Etzebeth turning out with 119 test appearances. And you know my feeling about that. Nobody's ever, as a Centurion, nobody's ever done it more consistently, in my opinion. He has more test appearances and experience than the whole number of test players in the Welsh pack. So that says that says a lot for me. It is an embarrassment of riches when you look at the 23 that Rassie's picked. Because for me, South African rugby at the moment and historically, and there's no reason to say that this is not going to continue. It is like a conglomerate. It is a production. It's like a Coca-Cola bottling plant. They just keep churning out, developing, and
or a castle
players.
Quality, yeah.
So with that in mind, you can see that now that Rassie is back in the driving seat, that maybe there's been a shift in his own thinking. That it is about driving excellence still. It is about not only continuing this winning run of theirs, but it's all about preparation for what is laid out as a very exciting rugby championship and a winter of football that we have ahead of us. So
yeah, which is
and it's unfortunate that the Welsh team are not able to play at the Millennium Stadium this weekend because of another kind of major economic thing with Taylor Swift being in Cardiff. So they go to Twickenham, which is not necessarily a happy hunting ground to them. They go to they play in England, but it'll end up being a kind of it'll end up feeling like a hometown welcome for South Africa. Yeah. So the odds are stacked against them. And of course the rhetoric this week is that we have nothing to lose. And, pride in the jersey and all that cuck, which I don't believe in, is that the players now have to respect that, there's been a rich heritage of rugby playing talent that have worn that jersey before them and hopefully to come. And I hate using that analogy. It's like, you are the here and now. You've got to start delivering. Whatever the key messages are over the last 2 weeks as you've been tight in camp, you've got to test yourself up against the best. And there is no doubt. The Boks are the best in the business at the moment. Yeah. And will continue to be the best in the business. Yeah. So this is a great test match. There's no doubt. But of course, you kind of want to be leaving Heathrow on Sunday night on that QF1 flight to Sydney, knowing that you did your best. Then there hopefully is a lot of good takeaways from your performance, rather than it just be a blowout.
What would be a good result for Wales? Because I think when we give our scores, we're all going to predict a Boks victory. Yeah. What would be a good result for the Welsh team and management getting on that?
So if I isolated Kevin, and I talked earlier about game management, obviously there's Dan Biggar not being available or retiring from the game has left an unusual void for us. Yeah. Considering that Wales has always had if we had a production facility, it was always we used to produce good number 10s. And this has nothing to do with, Sam Costello, but kind of he is front and centre. The spotlight is on him on Saturday. That's the responsibility that comes with wearing the Welsh number 10 jersey, doesn't it? So it is the decision making at halfback, and that can only be improved and excelled if if you get some parity up front. So again, I'm using a word that is not really doesn't really instill confidence. Parity, but they've got to get some type of go forward ball. The encouraging thing for me is that Owen Watkin and Mason Grady in the midfield. You know, they're big units. You know, there's a level of production that you've seen over the last couple of years. Certainly the emergence of Mason Grady, who has all the hallmarks like a Sterling Mortlock. You know, he's a big unit. So you've got to utilise these individuals that can potentially start to, you know, create some cracks through pressure in the South African defence. And I think at back, someone like Cameron Winnett, you ask me, you know, who am I excited about? I mean, this guy, yeah, you know, young, diminutive, but he's got a beautiful flow to him, very safe under the high ball, of course, dependent on the pressure. But the fact is that he does like to counter-attack and can beat the first defender. So again, if you can put a coherent game plan together that is very simplistic and very basic, rather than trying to throw too much information onto the players, is that, you know, just get out there and play the percentages.
Yeah.
What is your takeaway for South Africa from this Test match? Because the perspective is there's no Willie Leroux or Damian Willemse. There's no Kurtley Arendse, Kanamudi, or Cheslin Colby. Damon Delaney's on the bench. There's no Pollard, and there's no Lebok. It's not the 8-team backline. So if you take a Pollard, you take a Willie Leroux, a Damian Willemse, there's incredible structure that they play with, as well as within that framework. They're very exciting. So that backline is very talented. That's going out, but it's again a Springbok Barbarians.
Yeah.
The difference for me this time around is that pack is 5 World Cup winning Springboks in it, not 5 guys trying to make a World Cup side. So I think it's going to be pretty disjointed at times from the box. I think you're going to get a Fussy who's going to try and express himself.
Yeah.
You're going to get Jordan Hendrickse who's going to want to show he belongs there. Sasha, when he comes on, is going to play football. But you're going to see a lot of individual performances where I think the big advantage is the pack will play as a collective and play with that cohesion, knowing that there's a few hungry boys playing a few hours later that made a big statement last week, especially among the loose forwards. Cam Hanekom, Marco van Staden, Ulrich Lowe, Wilco Lowe's performance at tight head, to say we need a big performance against Wales to prepare us for the Irish Test series, because there's nothing before then. I go back to when we played Georgia. I know we came out the pandemic and all that kind of stuff, but again, you looked at team lineups and you think we should have smashed those guys by X, Y, Z. We also had a lot of individuals in that back line. And where we've fallen short in the past, no matter who coaches that box side, you go back to that SAA midweek matches when they lost to Munster, they lost to Bristol Bears third team. Very good individual URC players, but they just look clueless on the night. So I think we will win.
What would be a good, acceptable performance for the Boks? I guess asking Scott that for Wales. What would Rassie be pleased with?
I think he'd be pleased with cohesion more than anything else. With his pack being in control for most of the game, with a set piece functioning, no injuries obviously, and with 1 or 2 of the new boys coming through and showing a bit of individual magic in there, because fitness concerns apart, Deolandi will start against Ireland. Willie Leroux will start at fullback. Your win options may be different. Your 10's definitely going to be different. So he'll be looking at, could these players step in? But primarily, you go back to the strength at the World Cup, the 2 packs. the toughest, as Don Newman said, the toughest matches they had was at training, when the 2 packs went at each other live scrums, because they never used a machine. So he was going to say to the Vincent Cox of the world, you've got an opportunity. Frans Malherbe, you need to take your game up a bit. Eben's leadership. Peter Steff, you've got a great chance, because you know, Sia will probably captain them against Ireland, but there's definitely talk of a phasing out of him, especially if he continues to stay at Racing and play there. And then the big thing, Malcolm Marx hasn't played a competitive game.
No, just give me 20 minutes of Malcolm Marx and then pull him off, please.
You know, so they just need him to have a run, because he's definitely going to play in the Irish series. So I think if he can get Malcolm Marx through that, he can say we were never panicked. And these 4 guys slotted into a World Cup winning system. but the dynamics are so different to when they played at the Principality Stadium. They were on the rise to that World Cup and peaking for that. They're right at the start of the next 4-year cycle.
We're in a different cycle, and I think you are answering that question. What will he be happy with? He'll be happy with a very dominant pack performance, and less is more when it comes to the offensive side. That is, halfbacks just control the game and they play. They don't overplay. They just don't overplay their hand. Use the straight running lines and the strengths that they have in the midfield. Don't overcomplicate the counter-attack and play territory, and just put all the onus on the opposition to play out.
And then, then also, Kev, Tony Brown's influence. And now, I also feel a bit sorry for Tony Brown because people are expecting miracles from the first game. Yeah. And he's going to be someone who's going to evolve a backline that has to peak in Australia in 2027. So that evolution has to be an evolution.
Argue that they have to peak against the All Blacks.
Yeah, completely. And it's not a revolution. And he's going to need time to work with players to bring in small nuances, because we were so defensively orientated under Jacques, and successfully so. But our attacking game wasn't bad because of individual brilliance. But he's going to bring a collective attacking game, and that will depend on who's playing at 10, who's playing at 12. So I'll be interested to see if there's just a hint of anything there from him. And I think you'll see pretty much the same kind of defensive system because of Flannery having coached at Munster with Rassie and Jacques Nienaber.
Well, listening to the both of you give your views, this is a very difficult game to bet on. Because when you look at it from a handicapping point of view, you take the history, you look at the Boks on the rise, Wales going down or on the downward trajectory. Z, what would be a good performance for you? Right. Yeah, I know that.
What's your conspiracy?
I've stalked you. I know all that stuff.
What do you ask me?
What would you think is a good performance for the Boks?
I think there'd be like sort of KPIs, performance KPIs, less than score KPIs. I think the Boks backs are in the complete opposite situation to the Welsh backs. The Welsh backs are going to be trying to survive behind a losing pack and have a lot of pressure in their decision making. And the South African backs are in the completely different situation in the sense that they've got a pack that can clean up for their mistakes. So what Rassie's going to be looking for is, do they take liberty from that, or can they run the plan like they're supposed to? I think that's what Rassie's going to look at. There's a couple of guys there who are very exciting but have the potential to go off map, off plan sometimes. And I think Rassie's going to say, listen, you guys are driving a Lamborghini here with this pack. Can you make good decisions? Don't crash the car. So I think he'll look at the decision making specifically among the backs. I expect them to do well. They've got experience across the board up front, and then you've got those two veteran centres, and Faf has been there and done that. So if I was Wales, I'd be looking to attack that back three. I think the space between Edwell and Fassie in communication and in kick coverage is a place where you could potentially get the Boks, dangle some baits and see whether they take it. But it's dangerous because Fassie can beat three people on his own. So I think it's going to be a lot about decision making for Rassie. I think obviously the Boks must win, and I think they will. But Rassie's going to be looking at, I think, individual decision making primarily.
Yeah, there seems to be more at play for the Boks than a big victory. And it always seems to be the case with Rassie. And he's strategically put in people that the crowd, the fans of South African rugby have thought should be playing there to prove a point that person shouldn't be playing there. And he's done that a few times. I don't get that out of this game. But what would you say, Scott, is your score for this game?
Is it difficult to predict? I don't think so. I mean, because when you look at the pieces and the weapons, and you look at the history of these encounters, sidebar, 25 years ago to the day, really, when Wales beat South Africa for the first time in a half-built Millennium Stadium. So is that going to resonate with them now this weekend as they go into this kind of quasi affair? Away affair against South Africa in Twickenham. So there is nothing to look. We just got to see how much determination, application, and rugby know-how they've developed during this kind of small off-season period. But there's nothing to suggest that with the talent on show, in the Boks jersey, that even if they just stick in third gear and stay on message like Zelly says, they're going to be clear winners.
I think you should go into politics because I asked you for a score.
Score, all right.
Yeah.
Listen, I think this could be a blowout. Certainly could be a blowout. And I say that you know, we'd all be disappointed if the Boks didn't score at least 5 tries, you know, in the first hour of the game.
Wow!
So, you know, wouldn't you say that? Or
Absolutely.
Because what did we say? Like five converted tries, 35 points. That's nothing for a quality side like we see. That 23 there, you know, and whether. And I'll come to the answer. I will. I promise. I'll come to the answer. Is whether Rassie uses the 80 minutes that he makes strategic plays, like bringing Marks off in the first half an hour. You know, relieving some of the back three or the midfield just because he just has this rich, you know, a powerful bench. And of course, once the game is broken in the bag at 50 or 55 minutes, 60 minutes, then you know you never know what that outcome is going to be like, because you are playing up against a very inexperienced Welsh side who have a lot of injuries, a lot of key pieces that have been either rested or not available. Yeah. So whilst this is in this kind of rebuild phase,
and Azamat Reese,
and Azamat is obviously Kansas City, which is in Missouri, by the way.
Did you know that?
You told me about it.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. We go back to it. I think, you know, this is it's just the unfortunate part of whether, you know, from a punditry or a perception perspective that. You know, I think it is going to be a blowout, and I think this point spread is that I think if Wales can notch up 21, 25 points, I think it's going to be an enormous result for them.
Yeah. So what's the score?
50-21.
Okay.
Thanks for that. Of course, we will have an edit.
No, won't. This game reminds me of if you go back to '96, and you played in that game, Scotty, a Sunday game, and that was the famous quote from Willard on the way to the ground, where you walked across to the ground back then, and they were selling the Wales on Sunday paper, and the guy was screaming, Wales, Wales on Sunday, and he said, China, Wales on any day. And that's the Bok mentality back then. But Markgraf took that side and was a very good Springbok side, very settled, and it was a Welsh side with a sprinkling of, they had the likes of Scott there, but they were starting to build into something. The score was 37-20. It was a great afternoon, good footy. When you look at this Welsh side, they are playing to be part of the 4-year cycle and to be competitive against Australia. No one's expecting to go and win the series there or to beat the Boks. These are World Cup winners who have to now show that they're not doubting their place for this year in the Test Series or in the Rugby Championship. They've got to show that they've just got to get through the 80 minutes and be ready for Ireland. So I think you'll see a frenzied hunger from Wales that you won't necessarily see collectively from the Springboks. But I would stay away from it in terms of picking a score, because...
But you can't.
You can't, because you just...
Can't believe it! This is contagious!
I'm going to give you a score. Okay. But I'm going to say, because this isn't like we're playing a World Cup semi-final, it's going to be 1960 or whatever. This is at 60 minutes, Rassie may pull 7 blokes off because he's seen enough. Yeah. So I don't think there will be a blowout on Wales' side. I think they'll be competitive, but the Boks will always be a score 2 ahead. Yeah. So I'm seeing a replica scoreline, 37-20 to the Boks, but a comfortable 37. And there's going to be a 20-minute period that the Boks are going to look messy. They're going to look not necessarily disinterested, but disjointed. And Rassie's going to say it's great, it's humbled them. They've got that World Cup winning final out of their system. And look, we're not as good as you think you are. And that reverse psychology for Ireland, because his first thing that he said, brilliant Bulls, but I don't think it's going to be any easier for the Springboks against Ireland, because it's a different coach, it's a different colour jersey. So this is just the...
And that's what I'm worried about, Mark, is the interjection of personnel, the subbing, all this stuff that's going to take place. We're notoriously slow starters, South Africa, to start the season.
I'm just hoping we see him on the roof somewhere with doing something.
Exactly.
What's he going to start with?
So you said 37-20?
It's 37-20 to the Boks. Yeah.
Okay. Zell?
I'm going to give you a prediction, Kev. I'm a lot less worried about the changes, and I'll tell you why. Because this is the season for Radio SFM. Sasha is going to come off the bench, and we're going to be talking about Ireland series, and we're going to be saying, where should this kid play against Ireland? This guy is going to take over this year. It's going to be a huge season for him, and I think it starts this week when he comes on. Yeah. And so I think it's going to be relatively comfortable for the Boks. I think there will be some of those patches that Mark talks about where you go, sheesh, what are we doing?
Yeah.
But I've got the Boks to win this one, 36-15.
So 21. So you got the spread is 19.5, which is a difficult spread because you're looking at 3 converted tries to win your bet.
It's one that could go either way of that.
Well, yeah, because if you get 2 converted with 1 unconverted, that's 19. So you've got 3. You got to lose by 3 converted tries. Scotty knows more about Welsh rugby than I'll ever know. So I got to respect what Scotty says.
Well, you don't have to respect it. I mean, like everything, might change now and tomorrow. But the fact is, the optics are the optics. I mean, this is the best 23 Gatland can put out at the moment. Yeah. Is it clearly the best 23 in the Principality? Absolutely not. No. Just because of those missing pieces and so on. So that's why it will feel a little bit disjointed when you're up against such a well-oiled juggernaut. And
I love Mark's use of the word frenzy, because you will get a bit of a Welsh frenzy because they'll be up for the game more than the Springboks, I believe. Nothing to prove for the Springboks. They've won back-to-back World Cups. What score did you give?
36-15.
36-15. Yeah. So you both, Scotty and you, going over.
These guys are very conservative. We're close. I'm putting some separation between the scoreline, because I just feel it will be too much of an ask with the inherent dysfunction that needs to be ironed out. That you can't legislate for the Boks, put in 3 or 4 quick fire tries in just because of the individual brilliance, as long as they don't overplay their hand.
But I think what you're saying is Wales get 21 points.
Yeah,
3 tries, which you said 50-21.
Yeah,
that's a good place to be to get on the plane.
Yeah,
we're saying to the South African public, if the Boks don't get 50, don't be concerned. Yes. It's they don't need to get 50 in this match. No. Given what they want to achieve. So
look, when you consider that I got married on a day where we lost 96-13 at Loftus, Wales, South Africa always is a bit of a.
Thomas, poor bugger that
the guy that didn't get on.
No, the fly off shame, and Old Thomas. If a guy was put out to pasture, that was then.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but that was the guy that didn't get on, and James Dalton said to him, it was the seats, and James Dalton looked at him with about 2 minutes to go, and this the only bloke who never got on, and he said, China, how cuck must you be if they're not putting you on now? If they're not putting you on now, 926. What's his name? Who was the coach back then? Bowery, no? Kevin.
No, I don't think it was Kevin Bowring. I think he'd moved on, and it was Alec Evans when he was an interim coach.
Well, whoever it was, they said.
I'm not too sure. Listen,
they said when did it go wrong, and he said at kickoff.
I'm not putting any houses down on this bet, but I like South Africa to win by 20 or more. I think that the frenzy will be short-lived, if there is a frenzy from Wales, and the talent and the forward, the pack. It's not a game that I fancy Wales going to break their 6-game losing streak. Certainly going to go to 7. It could be 20 at half-time.
I think, voice of reason. When you talk about the collective now, you understand the numbers much better than we do. I think there's a lot of great insight from these two guys. But I always, I'm leading with my heart here. And of course I want to see a performance. I want to get some takeaways from it. And that's why I'm saying is that, gosh, they have to put up, an enormous fight to take on this kind of, this immovable force. And Rassie, I think, is too intellectually cute from a psychological perspective to demand nothing more than just 100% ferocity on Saturday with execution. And we got to take it to another level now, guys. Yeah. And there's no room for apathy. Otherwise, you know, you just get ticked off the list.
Yeah.
And we'll move on to someone who wants it more.
Well, it's like you say, we've got a conveyor belt of talent that's just producing such. I mean, has South African rugby ever been in a better position than now?
No, it's the strongest it's ever been. And I mean, I also love the mentality which hasn't changed over 6 years.
You know, the acceptance of this team that's
Show
come
them
in
some
by
vibes and go fuck them up.
Look, it's.
I don't think you gave a prediction, Kev. I don't think you gave a prediction.
I'm going to go 53-15 Springboks.
I thought you said 20 plus.
Well, it was more than 20.
53-15.
Really, eh?
Yeah. And a drop
Conservative,
goal,
eh?
a drop goal at the end of the game by.
So you think it'll be close?
Well, it's that's debatable. It'll be close for what the team that Wales is putting out and the state of Welsh rugby. It's like Scott said. It is what it is. The team. It's not the best team.
Yeah.
You've got.
My plea to all the supporters is, again, don't worry, don't panic now. Yeah. This is the new normal. Trust in the faith, trust in the process with the management team now. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of exciting pieces. There's a lot of good talent to come back refreshed after their break this summer. Yeah. And you know, we are now in a new cycle. We are in a new cycle. Obviously, there's wounds from the Six Nations that are hard to take.
They may never heal, as Rod Stewart said.
We got an opportunity next year. But it is the here and now, and unfortunately, it's up against the Boks, and then it's flying to Australia, you know, against the Joe Schmidt outfit, which is a discussion for another day. Tune in, because I think that's extremely interesting to look at the dynamics and the nuances as we play that out through the winter.
And I think we can do a video on the geography of Missouri and Kansas City and Zamet Reese's chance of making the team. I know we're all differing on that. Mm-hmm.
Do you know that Paris is in the Eastern Free State?
You make a good point.
It's a nice little town, that actually. I like Paris.
Yeah.
And the Cape Horn is in the southernmost point in South Africa.
So a lot of geography to be talked about.
Yeah,
thanks, guys, for coming in. Appreciate it. And tune in next week. And look forward to the rugby on the weekend. Go Bulls. Go Wales. Oh, Boks.
Bet responsibly.
Yeah, bet responsibly.